Hey guys, Eli here. I'm at Project Gecko training site. We just concluded 3 weeks of CQB training, and I thought to take the opportunity to film another episode in our series of analytic CQB videos of where we review trainings. Today I got a pretty cool video. This video was sent in by a follower. I'm not so aware exactly about where it was filmed or who exactly is performing in this video, but from my understanding, it is basically from a self-defense training where they basically focused on one-man room clearing, and it involved live fire exercise in some kind of a shoot house. Yeah, so this is at least what I know, self-defense, one-man clearing. So this is quite interesting. Now, from my perspective, or at least from a technical perspective, I think the individual in this video did a really good job. He moved very fast. He was shooting pretty fast as well. Relatively smooth, very simple, and very, I would say, somewhat efficient use of the handgun. So from my perspective, I think the guy did here really good work. And I think that we should also bear in mind that probably most of this training was done in a technical environment, meaning the use of the gun, marksmanship, movement, and not necessarily tactics or procedures or decision-making by itself, I guess. So yeah, let's jump into it. I would like to review 3 points that I found to be very interesting in this video. Yeah, let's review it. Okay guys, let's go through the first point. Point number 1 for me is depth and over-penetration. To keep it short and to the point, tactically, as you can see, tactically just from the perspective of positioning, he moves into the room, he overcommits to the corner to the left, he's digging that corner, and while he moves to that corner, that door from the right side, which he didn't saw from the outside, already exposes him to another door, and actually if you view it multiple times, you will understand that probably there was a target that saw part of his body. Now, a few points about that. First of all, the individual used what we call panning. Just want to define really quick what panning is actually, for the sake of terminology, and I will not go too deep into it. For me, panning is a very fluid, semi-dynamic movement around the threshold, which is utilized for the purpose of seeing the room as much as possible from the outside and then translating it into movement to the inside. So unlike, again, I'm sorry for maybe for the bad wording, but unlike traditional slicing the pie around the threshold, as most people are familiar with that, the idea of panning is that I move relatively fast, or at least as fast as I can process, around the threshold from A to B, and then basically I translate that movement either into an entry, or I'm going to delay or essentially abort my entry. So it is a constant movement. That's a very clear definition of a panning, constant movement, and it's basically a movement that allows me to see as much as possible from the outside of the room prior to entry. So basically that's what he's doing. We'll talk about it later, by the way, if it makes sense or not, but what happens here is that because the threshold is relatively thick, he's not able to see the corner. This is what we call isolation of the corner. We try to isolate corners from the outside as much as possible, not because we can clear them from the outside, which we can't, but we try to reduce task load prior to an entry, and we try to detect any depth in the room that is present before entry, okay? Now, if he did a proper work around the threshold or into the threshold, and he would have applied what we call isolation of the corner, he might have seen that door from the outside prior to making an entry, and therefore, as we teach, he could have snapped the corner, looked over shoulder, reduced the possibility of a threat from the back, already handled the corner from the outside while having the ability to bail out, and then he would move while already focusing on the door. Okay, that could have been way better from my perspective. So yeah, this is just something that is really important, I think, to to bring up. And it brings up also two other points. The first one for me is like where an adversary is actually likely to be. So in this context, why would an adversary wait for me in a corner of a room? It's a self-defense. I'm responding for someone who broke into my house, into my apartment. So obviously he's very mobile, he's moving, he's trying to steal, run away, whatsoever. I'm not saying that it's impossible for someone to be in the corner, circumstance-wise. It can be, like he's running into a dead end or whatever, but it doesn't mean that the corner now takes a significant priority over everything else, okay? This is just something we really have to remember, all right? But when it comes down to corners, what is really interesting for me is whether family members are going to be in those corners, right? So yeah, this is just something to think about. Again, there is, in this video specifically, a lot of the movements are oriented around clearing the corners and not the depth. If you really think about it, I really advise you to look at it into a couple of times and you will understand it. Also, running into the corner from a hand-to-hand combat doesn't really help me that much. Not so efficient anyway. So yeah, and the second thing that I would like to bring up is the whole topic of speed. He's doing it very fast. So again, I will propose the following. When it comes down to self-defense, you should be able to work very fast like he did, which I think, technically speaking, it was not bad. However, remember that the context of self-defense is a little bit different. So we need to differentiate during the onset or the trigger when I get a certain stimuli that someone broke in or I'm starting to have this orientation response. It's really important to distinguish between I have to go fast to do I right now? Because basically what can happen is that maybe I need to recover a family member. Maybe I don't need to recover a family member. Maybe I need to recover to some choke point in the stairs that I know I can see everything from above very well and own a really good angle, versus I'm alone, they don't know I'm here, they think that I was going for a vacation, but I'm actually here, and well, let's just first hear what's going on, let's bunker down, and from there, first call the police, get a 360 check that I'm fine, everything is fine, and from there start working thing and try to understand what is the nature of the happening. Again, I want to emphasize that in the self-defense context, you should know your environment or the layout of your apartment or home. Basically, you're training for terrain. That terrain will help you a lot in exploiting the situation and leaving enough bandwidth to process the situation better. Okay, so this is just something that I think is really, really important. So to simplify, I think there was a good entry speed in the sense that he moves relatively fast. If there's anything positive that you ask me to look for. But in terms of like what I think was not so good, it was the visual preparation before entering the room or how he consumed the angles around the door and the overexposed position as he enters, dig the corner, and that door is right to him and sees it completely. Speed moves you between positions that you act. This is something that is very important for me. Yeah, let's move to the next one. Okay, guys, the next point is about panning. Now, I want again to emphasize, I think that generally speaking, the movement of this individual was good. I think it was relatively fast. I think that the handling of the angle was relatively well. All things aside, I think really he did a good job. But of course, as always, we want to be as good as possible when we are looking always for the details, because details matter, okay? So I would like to go through basically panning and basically what it gives me and what it takes away from me. So for us as trainers in Project Gecko, we had a lot of arguments over panning, especially when it is being used and when it should not be used. And it's been ongoing for many years. We used eye trackers, video analysis, so much effort, and we concluded that it will definitely not going to be the default for us. We use it in very specific circumstances because we found out that when it's used in a broad way, in a generic way, it actually leads to more problems than good. It looks good, it feels good, but once you actually start to look for the details, it brings in a lot of issues. Okay, so this is just the first thing I want to emphasize. In this video, I will not break it down, but in the future, probably I will break it down and I will provide more information. First of all, let's break it down into two things: speed, position. I think that he did his panning relatively fast, which is not bad. By all means, CQB needs to be fast. But then again, let's go back to the self-defense context and ask ourselves, what is the circumstance of which you, the person who defend his own home, has to be fast. Again, this is very important because I have to ask myself, what is the onset? What is the stimuli that I'm dealing with right now? So, for example, what makes it very interesting about self-defense is that the trigger point, the very first moment when I receive a stimuli that wakes me up or diverts my attention that someone is here and he's not supposed to be here, that situation can be very, very different from different other situations that we saw in the past. For example, I can be at sleep, I can be in the kitchen, I can be in any other place, and with me in my apartment there can be family members, friends, or no one, and that changes it a lot. For example, if in your apartment your parents' sleeping room is deeper and your kids' room is closer to the point where people are more likely to break in from, obviously there is a feature of speed here in the sense that I have to get closer to a family member in order to protect them. On the other hand, maybe I'm on a second floor in my house, right, and there is a very nice staircase that goes down, and I know that if there is someone inside, I can move very quickly that staircase and hold a very good choke point before I'm being isolated to a room. On the other hand, if it's really dark, there is someone walking around, I didn't hear anyone breaking a window, I don't hear multiple people, it just seems to be some kind of like unclear movement, and I don't have anyone that I need to recover, why not moving slow? Why not searching properly, creeping your way around? Okay, so this is just something that will dictate a lot of speed, and when you're training self-defense, I will highly recommend to focus on this rather than how do I slice a door, because this really changes the course of action and what the situation, both from a threat or terrain perspective, is demanding for me. Now, I think he was very fast, and I'm really wondering how it will look like if we work in a low-light environment, or maybe the situation just does not require him to move fast, but he will alert people for his presence and the fact that he is there, right? Which doesn't give him a time to really assess what he's dealing with. Again, as we teach in self-defense, the first moments are the most important ones. You need to really have a good orientation response and to understand what's going on. So we talked about speed. Let's talk about position. What really bothers me when you look into it, and that's also one of the common issues with panning, is that basically as he moves so fast around the threshold, and he sees a target, he gets focused on a target, he starts to engage the target, but his body still moves. So as his body still moves, he's exposed to other angles that you can't see, but he's engaging one target. Now, this leads to several issues. First of all, we did an experiment in the past where we created the similar situation, like those targets in the room, but instead we were putting real role players. Imagine that the first target that he sees in that room is going to be a no-shoot target, his kid, his friend, whatever. Obviously, as he moves, his weapon is going to be on it, and he will need to process it. Maybe it's not even a person, it's just something that takes his attention, some dark corner, some kind of a mantle which is hanged on a closet, and he needs a second to process it because it looks like shoulders and a head. But as his body still moves, his body is exposing to other angles, which he can get shot from because he can't see them, but his head is still processing a certain angle. It's like a tank that moves from left to right with his body, but his turret is only fixed on a certain point. That tank can get hit from any other angle, but that turret can only see a certain angle and shoot at a certain angle. Okay, that makes it very interesting. What also happened as a result for that is that since he moves very quick around the threshold, he has a very narrow window of opportunity to make those shots, because at some point, obviously his body is still moving, that wall from the right side starts to close in. That actually leads him to shoot once the wall. And that is really a big issue, because obviously overpenetration, deflections, those stuff in a civilian context, much as also in a law enforcement context, are legally problematic. So also, I bring myself into a situation where bullets starts to fly all over the place. Again, that is a problem. And here you have it. Not only marksmanship and hard skills influence the output, but also your tactical movement, the way you move, how you move, the intention behind it, right? This is something that I think for me is very important. So I think the panning was not necessary here. There would have been a better way to do that. But then maybe I should just make a video about it and just demonstrate it in the future. That's just something for me. And again, he moves around the threshold, he hit the wall, there is that small deflection or fragmentation there, and that is really a problem. And again, if you play it slowly and you pay attention, as he moves, his weapon is fixed on a target. He's in an open door, reacting with a target. Probably he still needs to identify in reality anyway. He's probably needing to use that white light anyway. He's totally reactive in the middle of the door, making it easy for a threat just to shoot back at that thing that moves. Pretty easy, right? So yes, I would actually rather have a concealment, which a bullet can still fly through it. I would rather have a bullet fly through a wall and then through my plate carrier versus just me standing in the middle of the door, making it easy for him to see me and just respond. All right, so this is just something that I think, well, you know, is really important to highlight. Yeah, let's move to the next one. Okay, point number 3. I think this one is very interesting. It's basically what we call isolated corner. So in the last room, he moves from the right to the left, and if you take good look into that workspace to the left of the threshold, it is what we call an isolated corner. It's a corner that doesn't have enough depth. It doesn't have enough depth to bail into, to move into, and basically, if there would be a threat in that room shooting back, he has a really crappy position to be at. He's isolated. He will have to jump back over the door in order to bail himself. Also because his head is so close to that wall, any shots actually coming from that target in the room, like 45 degrees to 35, 20 degrees, any shots hitting that wall behind him are having a really good chance to deflect into his face. That includes also some walls that are not as that thick. Okay, so test it, you'll see. With dry shit, it might go through, probably, but then again, those bullets will hit the wall just next to him. So this is really problematic, all right? So it also makes it very difficult because there is no depth to see the corner from the outside. Now I understand that the threshold is very thick, right? But if it would not be thick, still, it would be very difficult for him to see the corner from the outside. He will burn more time in order to see it, and therefore he will have to get through the door. The way we would do that is I would simply just basically, as you know, we can call it J-hooking around the door and just snap that corner and get it once and for all and done. Yeah, so this is just something that I think really important. Again, isolated corner, not enough depth to bail to, especially if I have malfunction or any kind of an issue. But also, if I'm actually finding myself in a firefight, I'm so close to the wall that bullets hitting behind me are going to ricochet into me or send fragmentations into my neck. And that's something that we saw before. Not so cool, not so nice. So this is just something small to recap. Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in for this episode. I hope it was useful for you. I'm looking forward to filming more of those. And again, I'm reminding you, if you have your own video or you want to send us any other videos, feel free to reach out to us. And I'll be very happy to view your videos and put them into our episodes. So thank you very much, guys. We're going to go back now to more training in the upcoming weeks. And yeah, take care. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Have a good one.